My name is Kevin Grant, and I'm representing MNP. This is our first time at the conference, and we're very excited to be here, and thank you for having us. We are a full-service business advisory, consulting, accounting, and tax firm. I won't bore you too much with our accounting side of it. As the food and beverage industry is one of our specific focuses, we thought this conference would be a great fit for us. We also chose this panel as we understand how important diversification in the industry is given the issues craft beer brewers are facing. I'm excited to introduce the moderator for this panel today, Chloe Smith. Hello. Now, Chloe is the co-founder of Townsite Brewing, a BC Craft Brewers Guild board member, and a Canadian Craft Brewers Association member at large. Townsite Brewing opened in 2012, and it says it's building itself to be a destination, a brewery destination on the Sunshine Coast, but I think it already is a destination, so good job for you. Yes. And she also, in her spare time, she enjoys knitting in the round, apparently. Yes. So, Chloe, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you for sponsoring us. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Thank you, Jen. That would help. First of all, I want to say a really big thank you to everybody for coming out here into the big room today. Normally, the diversity panel doesn't get the big room, so I think that that's pretty indicative of what's going on in the marketplace right now. We are we're in a really interesting time in beer right now, right? And this is this is one of the most important discussions, I think. And so I really want to start this by asking everybody here, by raise of hand, who here is attending their first all-female panel at a beer conference? And I'm going to raise my own hand, because I am as well. Yeah, I think that's the whole room. So, holy shit, right? So that's why we're here, that and this. I don't know how Dave Mitchell got in a beer meme, but there he is. So we have a very exciting panel of super highly qualified women here to discuss this topic. Why we're here, why are we doing this? I don't think that there's a market that the Mills brothers have not yet discovered that's gonna, blow the lid off this thing and make us all millions. And I just want to say that this slide is out of focus because Adam sent it to me that way. He was drunk. It is not my fault. I don't think that there's a packaging format that Moody Ales has not yet tried that is going to blow the lid off this thing and make us all millions. But I do think that there is one thing that we can do here today, and that is to diversify our market. So the format here today is we're going to discuss some of the misconceptions that we have around selling beer, because it's very important that we consider where we have come from in order to get past it. So then we're going to get into a few how-tos, and then we're going to leave some time for Q&A. On our panel today, we have Nancy Moore, who this morning we heard can very eloquently state is a legend, and it's true. This woman is celebrating 40 years in the beer industry this year. It's incredible. That is incredible. Nancy was the first female modern-day brewmaster in North America. What? Come on, that's incredible. Beer has taken her to over 70 countries. She was at one point in charge of all Guinness production outside of Europe, that's incredible. And that explains this. Beside Nancy, we have Jenn Vervier, who spent 25 years at the New Belgian Brewing Company. She is currently the CEO at Persephone, joins me on the Sunshine Coast, my sister brewery on the Sunshine Coast. I also love Gibbs and Stout and the 101. Jenn had various roles at New Belgium. She was CFO. She was also a bottle monkey because, most good people start on the bottling line, don't they? And Jenn's favorite beer is Orval. Next up, we have a very familiar face in our industry, Rebecca Whyman. Rebecca co-hosted a CBC show with Stephen Quinn about beer, and you also will find her articles frequently in The Growler, and her current favorite beer is made by the multi-talented Mr. David Boquette. So thank you very much. Okay, let's get started here. Nancy, have you ever heard this one? You can't sell beer to women because they have an aversion to bitterness and they just don't like it.
Actually, I'm going to credit Brian Roth, who talked about this last night, because we did hear about the evolutionary advantages of not liking bitter products, and we actually do know that sex hormones are involved there. And what we know is that pregnant women very quickly develop a sensitivity to bitterness, and which makes a lot of sense because they needed to protect themselves and their child when they were pregnant. But let's be really clear, pregnant women are not our target market, right? Right? So let's get over that one. But there is, according to a researcher at Yale, a woman named Linda Bartoshuk, Yale Medical School, the work she did said that about 35% of women and between 15 and 22% of men are what we call super tasters. And super tasters are people that are more sensitive to all flavors, not just bitterness. And then, here's Wikipedia. A super taster is a person who experiences the sense of taste with far greater intensity than average, with some studies showing an increased sensitivity to bitter tastes. What we do know is that's actually related to the number of taste buds that they've got. So the numbers might be slightly higher. They are slightly higher for women than they are men. So let's pretend, for pretend's sake, that 1/3 of the female population does in fact have an aversion to bitterness. But how does that relate to beer specifically is what I'm trying to understand. Can anyone name some other bitter things that are marketed exclusively to men? Gin and tonic? No gin and tonic drinkers in the room here? No? I meant just a second. You're a woman. You can't drink gin and tonic. Bitter chocolate? Nobody drinks that or eats that. Aperol, the latest trendy pink drink that I guess it's orange drink that everybody's drinking. Jägermeister. And frankly, I'm really tired of all the male-focused coffee ads that are out there right now. When you say it out loud, it actually sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? Have we made a gross misconception? Are we marketing beer exclusively to men because of some misconceptions? And there's a couple of biases here, and I can't see what we got up there. The first one, so we've been selling beer in the same way to the same people for a lot of years. And because of something that someone told us that might not actually be true. And there's a couple of biases that we know of scientifically that might impact that. Both of these, the first one I've got up is the anchoring bias. And the anchoring bias just says you believe the first thing that you learn. How many of us bought the first condo or rented the first apartment that we saw when we were out looking? I've done that several times, so I'm the only one there. And the second one is the bandwagon bias, that if everybody else believes it, then it must be true, and you're not going to go against that. And the reality is that both of these, the bandwagon and the anchoring bias, show up when we ask consumers, what do they think about our beer? Consumers aren't trained tasters, and we heard last night in the beer tasting session, those of you that were there, the importance of learning the right words to put with the taste that you're doing, that you're actually experiencing. So consumers actually don't know the taste. They don't know how to name the things that they're tasting in our beer. They can tell you if they like it and if they don't like it, but if they don't know the word, they do know, because everybody knows that beer is bitter. So bitter is a good word to use to describe beer. So my experience in interpreting consumer taste panels has said that quite frequently people just say the beer is too bitter when they really don't like something else. They just don't have the words to actually describe what it is they don't like. And maybe, just maybe, this is why the average North American lager has skyrocketed down from, dropped significantly over the years. Certainly since I've started, that the taste has kept going. It may not have been too bitter in the first place, but it's really not very bitter now. So what difference does that make to us? So let's consider it this way. If we sell beer primarily to white males between 20 and 50, and my apologies to all of you in that class, I love you all dearly, but we ignore all the other males in how we're marketing our beers, and with females we do even worse than that. So here's a slide depicting what we actually sell to. It's 1/8 of the population. It's really not a very good way to make money. I'm only gonna look to 1/8 of the population and see if I can make money off of them.
I think, yeah. I just want to make a point there that, like, what are the implications of that? What are the implications of us asking such a small percentage of our population to carry this entire industry as it experiences this crazy growth? And then at best we're ignoring the green ones and we're alienating the yellow piece of the pie. So that, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And what is the fallout of that?
I think it's even more important, actually, when you add to that the impact of responsible drinking initiatives. Our industry can no longer rely only on the heavy drinkers. Because eventually they're going to disappear, and the younger people are drinking less alcohol than we did, or certainly less alcohol than I did. So we need to be careful about where that's taking our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're essentially shooting ourselves in the foot by selling to too small a market share. We are selling based on this assumption that women don't like bitter things, which is clearly untrue. I had more coffee than beer so far today. Thank you very much. You know, what can we do to stop these assumptions? We need to stop the assumption, basically, of why we sell beer to men instead of women.
And I think the first assumption we need to get rid of is that women don't like beer for any reason, really, because we know women have very developed palates. So this slide is from some of the Nielsen work from the Brewers Association last year. And what it says is there are a lot of types of beer that women like more than men. But we haven't historically. I think this is the first time I've seen the Brewers Association information actually look at what are women saying differently than men. And remember, this slide's only what they told the interviews. If you put them down in your tasting room and said, "Tell us what you think about this beer or this one," you might find something completely different. But I think that the important part in all of this is that. We have to realize that we have been just totally focused on a very small segment of the population, and now really is the only time to ever start changing anything. So why don't we take this now? If for no other reason, then we also heard last night about the hard seltzer category, which I think I would equate with the ready to drink category here in BC. Brian talked about how much it is climbing in the United States, and that we're losing ground. And in British Columbia, the LDB service plan results from last year showed that refreshment beverages, what we call the category here, are up 20.4%. So they've moved from 6.4% of the alcohol sold in BC to 7.5% of total alcohol sales in BC. Beer is sliding. We heard it's actually down to 33% of total alcohol sales in British Columbia. And if craft is, let's say it's 30% of that, so we've got 10% of the market, and our our friends in refreshment beverages are climbing up that. So we are still climbing, but we're climbing a declining slope. It's one of those we have to be careful.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Those are all very good points. So to summarize, we need to stop selling beer to men exclusively for reasons that we have, assumptions that we have made that are not necessarily true. And what are some of those other assumptions? What are these assumptions around certain cultures that don't metabolize alcohol properly? And so we should ignore them, but they seem to drink a lot of alcohol. So why are we ignoring them? It doesn't really make any sense. And we need to make some changes now because there are other beverages that are taking our sales momentum away. So moving on, Jen, what about that woman who comes into the liquor store you're doing a beer tasting at, crunches up her nose and says, oh, no, I just don't like beer?
I think what the hypothesis that we're going to try to present is that women might think that they don't like beer because for the whole history of beer advertising, women have been excluded or ridiculed and objectified, right, frankly. And we saw some of these images in other people's presentations today. So through advertising, women have been made to feel like outsiders in the world of men and their beers. So why wouldn't their subconscious tell them that they're not welcome in the world of beer? How many of you are familiar with this? That just this past summer in the UK, they have an advertising standards authority, and they have banned advertising that endorses harmful gender stereotypes. Have you guys heard that? Yeah. Yeah. It's a big deal. And why? Because they actually have data that can prove that gender stereotypes, quote, can restrict people's choices, aspirations, and opportunities, and that gender stereotypes in ads contribute to how people see themselves and their roles in society. So if advertising can do that, make girls think, oh, I can be a nurse but not a doctor. I can have a husband who sleeps on the couch and drinks beer while I work in the kitchen. Like, if the advertising can do that, it certainly can make the women think that they are not beer drinkers because they don't see themselves as beer drinkers in advertising. That's another sexist ad. So obviously, we've had decades of sexist advertising. That's what we're talking about. And it was started by the older, bigger breweries, right? But we still, in craft, have work to do to change these misconceptions. So I've been in the industry for over 2 decades, as Chloe said, and I've been in many marketing meetings where the strategy is, we're talking strategy, and this is given as a fact, which I think is actually a sexist trope that says women will wear pants, but men won't wear skirts. Have you heard that? Well, good for you. So what does that mean? It means don't market to women or you'll risk alienating your core base of male consumers who are your core drinkers. But as Nancy pointed out, our core drinkers, quote unquote, are only 1/8 of the population and beer is declining. So obviously this is a losing strategy.
I had never heard that
Okay.
women will wear pants but men won't wear skirts. And that, what kind of a societal statement is that? You're going to offend the men by talking to the women.
Right, exactly.
Fuck you.
Yes, it's a binary gender normative statement, right? And that's one that we have to reject. And craft beer is a cultural phenomenon, right? Craft beer is an exciting business to be in because it's broken so many accepted norms. That's why we got all excited about hearing Steve talk this morning. That craft beer does business differently. So business is typically competition is bad, but in craft we say a rising tide floats all boats. We've gotten people to pay more for our product by emphasizing quality over quantity. We've resurrected ancient techniques and crazy ingredients. We're nurturing community in our tasting rooms. I think that craft set the precedent for the makers movement that's gone to knitting and welding and all those other things, as well as slow food and the 100-mile diet, and on and on and on. So many of us were attracted to this industry not just because we love beer, but because we love the ethos of craft beer. And leaving out half the population is not true to that ethos. So Well, I mean, to be fair, like not many of us or any of us, I hope, are creating sexist ads because a lot of us don't even have budget for advertising. But, but we are naming beers and creating labels, and we run tasting rooms and we hire people. So that's where, that we have the leverage to address this issue. Even though that we didn't create it, we have the opportunity to rectify it. And I think one of the major point that one of the several major points that we want to make on this panel is that we can make our industry more successful by making it more inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agreed. All right. So in the name of transparency, what about that elephant in the room that people think that beer makes them fat, so they don't drink it?
Well, I think we all laughed out loud this morning when Steve was like, people don't drink beer to lose weight. True, probably true. And so people, if they're concerned about their health, that's a good thing. We don't support overconsumption. But I think this is kind of like Nancy was alluding to about the mathematics. It's another reason to widen the tent, and make our beer more appealing to more consumers. Because if we have 7/8 of the population drinking two beers a week, that's more beer sold than if 1/8 of us drinks 12 beers a week. It's complicated, maybe. Yes, but I think that illustrates it. And we can probably charge more for that beer if people are only buying 2 of them rather than we need them to buy a 12-pack to keep us going. So also I think then there's the beer calorie myth. So the calories, and to be fair, I learned this really more from Nancy, but the calories in beer and wine and spirits come almost exclusively from the alcohol, right? It's the alcohol that makes alcoholic beverages fattening. So beer has less alcohol by volume, so naturally it has less calories by volume. And of course, the serving sizes are different, and that's where the spirits people and the wine people will push back. But if you look at it on the per ounce basis, beer wins. And I think a lot of people don't know that, and I think that's something we can say to our women friends who are afraid to pick up a beer.
That's awesome. Okay, so just to wrap up, a few things that we need to be aware of. Beer advertising has done women a disservice. We've largely ignored everybody else, and we have an opportunity to be better. I would argue we have an obligation to be better, but you do what you want. Craft beer is a leader in some of these grassroots movements, and we can maybe refocus on that and kind of come back to the ethos that the whole industry was built on, and to be cognizant of the fact that we may be asking too small of a percentage of our population to carry this industry. So we have one last topic to cover before we get into some how-tos. So Rebecca, what do you say to those people who tell you, oh, we're over this in craft beer. We don't need to talk about this anymore?
Oh, how I wish that was true. I think we'd all like to believe that craft beer is more in tune than a lot of other industries, and that we've all definitely been doing our part to welcome everybody into the magical world of beer, because it's a fabulous world. And I'm not saying that everybody hasn't been working very hard to do that. But if you look at the numbers, like women only making up 1/3 of beer drinkers, 7.5% of brewers in America are women. That's it, 7.5. 76% of American brewery workers are white. 89% of the owners in America are white. I mean, we're not there yet. We're actually pretty far away on a lot of the counts. But beer has a reputation of being fun-loving and easygoing, and that's really great. And I think that doesn't preclude us from going forward and inviting a lot more people in to join us, because we are fun-loving and easygoing.
It's beer, people. Good Lord.
Yeah, it's beer. Beer is fun. But if you look around the room, I mean, beer industry is most welcoming to white men. Look around the room. There's more white men in here than there are any other group. I'm not going to make judgments. So, if you extrapolate this across the rest of beer world, that's what we're getting. And, I'm not pointing any fingers here. I'm in beer world too. You can be as feminist AF and still not know all you could be doing to make craft beer accessible to women. You can be an ally to every minority group out there and still not know how to reach everyone. So I think what we want everybody to walk away from this seminar with is, a new commitment towards welcoming the rest of people into beer world with us. And we want to give you some tools to help you keep that commitment. So I'm just going to hit you with a couple more stats, just in case you didn't already believe me. So 28% of Canadian men think that they're being expected to do too much to support women's equality.
Excuse me?
28%.
What?
Yeah.
1 in 3 men think it's going to be too hard for them.
No, we're asking them too much.
We're asking them too much for me to make as much money.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse.
Again, fuck you.
In Serbia, it's
In Serbia.
79%. So,
Wow.
you know, we're better than Serbia on that one. And then 2/3 of men around the world, though, realize that gender equality won't be achieved unless they also take action to make it happen. So go you 2/3. So beer drinkers are 30% female. I got that number from doing a little of that easy math again. The 2018 survey by Nielsen Harris found that American craft beer drinkers are 68.5% male, 31.5% female. And closer to home, Beer Me BC in 2018 found that those numbers were 71% and 29%, with a small portion of non-binary joining in. So my math says that that's 3 women drinking beer for every 7 men. So that's an awful lot of people you could be getting out to drink your beer. And then the divide widens even further if we look at women enrolling in brewing school. It's an 82 to 18% split at Kwantlen University to take the brewing program.
Hey, Nancy, how many women are enrolled this year?
The first year, we only have 1 in our first year.
1 woman this year of 25 students. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, so in case you still don't believe me, I'm going to go on just a little further. I think that one possible reason for the lower enrollment in brewing programs could be the bias against beers made by women. Stanford University found that gender stereotyping significantly affects the way we're evaluating products. So if you think that nobody's going to appreciate your beer, you might not want to go to beer school to make it. Fortunately, though, if the beers made by women had won awards, or if they were being tasted by beer experts, the bias didn't exist. So there's hope. We're getting there. But if we know the beer is good, how are we going to convince the other consumers to overcome their bias against it? And while this bias may be unconscious, it can still cause harm. If you look at the auto industry, they've been working on making cars safer for years, but they only use male crash test dummies. So this has left a woman 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a car accident than a man, just because the bias left her out of the safety testing. And that hurts me. But those are all unconscious biases. What about if you have a purposeful bias? You've found yourself a niche market. You want to only market to those, 20 to 50-year-old white men because they're drinking an awful lot of your beer. You could be missing out on getting your products into more hands because people drinking the beer aren't always the ones purchasing it. So if you're alienating a whole bunch of the market, they're not taking your beer and putting it in that shopping cart. So how far away from gender parity are we? And I'm hoping this one doesn't scare everybody away. But the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index, it measures gender equality based on women's representation in the workforce, public office, and in health and education outcomes. And their projections have us 51 years away from gender parity. I don't think I'm still going to be alive to see it, unfortunately. But in the United States, it's 208 years. So, we're better than America.
At least we have a chance in Canada seeing it. It's awesome.
Yeah, we have a chance.
Okay, so that's who we've been selling beer to and why. Monday morning, nobody's going to do that anymore, right? Right. Okay, so let's get into some how-tos. Rebecca, how are we going to do this exactly?
Well, let's start with welcoming women, people of color, and the LGBTQ community into craft beer. Labeling. Get rid of your sexist, racist, homophobic beer names, beer labels, any advertising you might actually have that is objectifying anyone. Lose the stereotypes. Stop thinking that only some people like hoppy beers or imperial beers, and market accordingly. Evangelize. Start conversations with your patrons. Find out what they're finding inviting about your tasting room, what you could be doing to attract more people in their demographic, to your tasting room, your workplace, and into your brand.
Yeah, I think that I just want to interject there that I think that's a really interesting one. Like, what are the small things that we are doing that is maybe not appealing to a wider market, right? Is it the music that you're playing? Is it the glassware that we're using? Is it the food that we're offering? If you have TV screens, is it what you're showing in your, we have to ask people, why aren't you coming in here? What is it? You don't like drinking out of a mason jar? Okay, maybe I can make that change. Maybe I can have, salsa music on Tuesdays if that appeals to you or so. I mean, I think there are small changes that we could make that we just hadn't necessarily considered.
Why is everyone moving to 473 ml cans from 355 when women may drink slow?
Want a smaller beer? Yeah.
Before it gets warm.
Yeah.
The liquor stores keep asking for you.
We'll work on them too.
Yeah. Back to you, Rebecca. What else?
Non-gendered bathrooms. They're just so good for so many reasons. They keep the line moving faster. Everyone has access to the baby change station then. Non-binary folks feel welcome. It's just, one of the easier things you can do to be more welcoming. For fundraisers and events, you can look for more neutral themes. Not everything has to be centered around sports or the dominant culture. Get creative.
Nancy has a good point about that. You want to make your point about that?
I rarely need a microphone. I noted a couple of years ago that our major publicity, fundraising, community building events here in this town around craft beer, well, one's a hockey tournament and the other's a boxing match. Thank you. And there are women that are going to take part, and I play hockey. Rebecca plays rugby. Should we start a rugby thing? But they're not really all that inclusive. Most, I don't know what I know why I do, because I want to be part of the community. But there may be other things that we can do to build community build the craft community without playing sports.
And then moving away from beer snobbery, just being welcome to people that are new to beer and making beer for all palates. Crazy beers are fun. I love them. But if that's all you're offering is these esoteric concoctions, you're possibly turning away a very big population of beer drinkers.
And not even great, good for you, do that if that's your business model. But to make fun of people for not liking it is something that actually worked for a long time, right? For the first 15 years of this industry, it was really hard to get people to drink craft beer. It really was. And then there was this moment where Greg Koch was like, you know what? Fuck you. It's not for you. And everyone went, I have to have it. And that became the way to sell beer. And that was awesome. But we've moved past that, and we really have to stop, shaming people for not liking the flavors in beer. And I want to add something to this actually that occurred to me last night at Brian's talk. He had a good slideshow. He had 100 slides. None of them were fuzzy. I know I'm not drunk. You're drunk. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever. But one of the slides was about the groups of people where beer is seeing growth right now. And the biggest growth was in Hispanic women. So here's a fun fact and something that we can all do this weekend. Here's a fun fact for you. In 2016, in the United States, there were 50,000 people working in the coal mining industry. What the fuck? And their average annual salary was about $50,000. So those are men, right? Those are men working in those jobs. The housekeeping industry, which employs a lot of Hispanic and Southeast Asian women, employed over 900,000 people, and their annual average salary was $25,000. So if beer is the working person's drink, the working person is currently women. And what we can all do, this weekend, if you're staying here in this hotel or in an Airbnb, leave beer as a tip. Or better yet, leave a gift card for your tasting room with a note thanking that woman for her hard work, thanking that person for their hard work, and inviting them into your tasting room and saying, the first one's on me. I would really like to see you there. I think that's something that we could all start doing right now. Okay, Jen, what about the workplace? How can we change the workplace?
Well, I think that someone talked about it earlier. We're getting more women brewers, right? That's something that we should all work on. And many women come into our companies as in the lab, and it's pretty quick. Hop, skip, and a jump from the lab to the brew house. So when you're hiring, you just need to make sure that you are not gender biased by asking everyone the same questions, not second guessing anyone's ability or anyone's to do the job or anyone's knowledge. Of course, pay equity is key, and not just obviously paying women and men the same for the same job. That, God willing, is hopefully a no-brainer, and also the law, but making sure that we're providing equal pay for work of equal value. Diversity in ownership, which, you can't maybe change the founders and the owners, but you can certainly change management and especially the board. I think that's really important that craft lead the way in this regard.
That's a super good point. Yeah. How diverse is your board?
Yeah. And I think that this is an easy one that everyone can do. Like, talk to the women who are working for you right now. What are they experiencing barriers in their career? Do they have friends who would like to apply but aren't for a certain reason? And get some insight from the women you are currently working with. And then I think apropos to where we are today is networking. Like, networking is so important, and that kind of relates to, is it a boxing match or a hockey game, but also a conference. So maybe next year, make it a point to get your female or non-male, non-white employees to the BC Craft Brewers Conference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Nancy, what do you want to add to this? Do you remember?
It's late in the day, but I can remember. I think the first one, I wrote down, be impeccable with your word. And I realize that I'm sometimes guilty of this as well. So just in case anyone thinks that we think we're perfect, this one's not. And the thing I can admit to is I will frequently, in my classes and when I'm talking to people, I use the word guys as a gender neutral term, but to a lot of people, it's not. So that one's one of my own personal learnings. If I have any students out there, you can correct me on that for the next year. If you see me talk about you guys, you're not. You're you people. The other one is that and this is maybe new to a lot of us, and it's another one that I have to work at myself very diligently, is to think about my gender bias. And this is in words. So when I start talking to someone, to listen to them, how do they refer to themselves? Do they talk about them? Are they being referred to as he, she? Or if you don't know that, I like to refer to people as they or them until I'm clear on what their preferred pronouns are. And that is much more difficult than it sounds, trust me. Put your money where your mouth is. Are some breweries that on Pride Week will go take their Facebook page or their Instagram page and they will put a rainbow flag on it. And that's the end of their inclusivity for the year. If you're serious about it, then be welcome, be supportive all year round, to including making charitable donations, hosting events at your tasting room, finding out why people don't come to your tasting room, perhaps. And the last one, and I'm sorry, guys, I got to say this one, enough with the mansplaining. So when you are telling, if someone comes into your tasting room or you meet them in a pub and you want to talk about beer, make sure you're educating, not condescending, and because God help you, you might be saying it to one of us.
Just a word of warning, I am very preferential to the throat punch. So, I warned you. Okay, Rebecca, wrap this up for us. We're going to get to some Q&A here.
Well, if we continue to do what we've always done, we're going to continue to get what we've always gotten. So it's time to look for some new venues. And, none of us know what we don't know. That's unfortunate, but we don't know what we don't know. So if we're all going to be more inviting and welcoming to feedback from people, then we're going to have a much better chance of reaching other people. And it's not going to be a comfortable process the whole time. Nothing ever is. Having to remember to not misgender people, it's going to take some time. But if everybody works towards it, we'll all get there. We can still have this fun-loving and easygoing beer world while we're working to include everybody in it. And so I have a couple more tools, and these ones are probably going to take a little longer to implement because they're sort of further-reaching ideas. But one of them is to invite people in. Diversity champion Ren Navarro has a great talk on this. But what she says, it's not enough to just allow people into your space. You need to invite them in. You need to make sure they know how to access it, that they're going to be safe when they're there. And that's it's quite a mind shift. And so it's going to take a little while to be thinking of that, I'm not just welcoming, I need to actually go out and invite you to come in. Part of that is looking around your tasting room, seeing who's not there, who's not buying your packaged product. Who isn't applying to work with you, and go out and find some community groups of those particular segments that are not being represented by you and find ways that are welcoming to them. Because again, you don't know what you don't know. So learn what you don't know.
Ask the question. Yeah, when we were talking about this panel, I said to these three women, I said, I know the people. I can name the people that I don't see in my tasting room because I live in a very small town. A lot of us are very entrenched in our communities, and we can identify those people very easily. So take them for a coffee. I haven't done it yet. It's still summer. I don't care. It's almost November. Shut up. But take them out for a coffee and just really honestly, why aren't you coming? And don't take I don't like beer for an answer. That's not the answer.
We can also work on brewery cultures. Too much is still relying on the old boys club of doing deals over golf. And I mean, I'm not suggesting you all go golfing, but that is the way things were done. That's the way people seem to keep going. So examine all of the less obvious things you're doing that may be only inclusive to certain people. And that goes for diversity hiring as well. If you just rely on word of mouth advertising or friend of friend, you're going to keep attracting the same people that you've already got in. Reach out to underrepresented communities and invite them to apply, and you'll get a much more diverse group.
That's awesome. Okay. What, in our opinion, what are the key indicators that we are over it? We don't have to talk about this in craft beer anymore.
Well, we'll be useless as a panel when female brewers are referred to simply as brewers.
No.
Woohoo! In a mixed group of beer professionals, the women will be considered just as likely to be the brewmaster as one of the men. We'll have parity. There will be as many women drinking beer as there are men. There won't be any more bearded white guy memes because they just won't be relevant anymore.
Nobody will get it. Nobody will get the reference. Why did they put that up? 43-year-old mom, what are you doing?
And no one will ever again consider a sexist, racist, or homophobic beer name or label.
Can I get a hell yeah? I really hope that this is just the start of this discussion here in BC with all of us. I hope that we have been able to kind of instill some ideas and get the juices flowing. And I really, we don't purport to have all the answers, but we just really think that this is an important discussion that we all start having immediately. So thank you all very much for coming. Thank you all very much for agreeing to do this with me. That was super fun. And we do have some time for Q&A if anybody has any questions. Or if you want to just come up and chew the shit, we'll do that too. Yes? The election is next week. Get out and vote.
I think the Indigenous population is one that we see, and we're all because we're becoming more and more aware of it. I think we understand, but I think that Rebecca's point is that she talked about going out and finding other communities, and I've dealt with this. Trying to get board members. So we say as for example, not-for-profit boards, that we want our boards to represent our community. And we used to joke about looking for the mythical Southeast Asian male under 25 that lives in Surrey, and that nobody could find them. And what an Indigenous fellow actually said to me is, you won't find people if you just go out and look for them for that thing. That what you have to do is build the connections to the community, and then those connections will start to appear, and the people will start to appear. But this is not a fast. This is. I mean, I'd like to say I wish I was going to be here in 51 years to see equality, but this takes some time, and it's hard work. Can I add another? How we'll tell whether we're done. And this is not me. This was actually, and I don't know if this person's in the room, but I'm gonna tell her. I'm gonna tell a story on her anyway, and she will remain nameless. But a brewer said to me when I said we were talking about this, she said, "Yeah," she says, "I just want to have the media come up to me and go, what's it like to either go of two things? What's it like to be a brewer? Or what's it like to be a vagina, or to have a vagina? But I don't want to have to explain the two together." Okay. I'm going to go with that one.
Okay, awesome. Yes.
Sorry, it's not a question, but I have a small observation. You were talking about it would be nice to have more women group, but I want to also add that women owners, because that's where things really change.
Yeah. And a lot of this is chicken and egg, right? Like, do we need the beer drinkers to be more diverse, or do we need the workforce to be diverse? What will be the escalator to the next thing, right? So, I mean, you can look at this from all different directions, but I honestly, I think I hadn't considered the board of directors. That's a very good place to start. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Claire. Thanks for clapping at all of our points.
Actually, there is a statistic, and I don't remember where I read it, so don't quote. You can quote me, but I won't give you a source because I don't remember where it is. That actually, once boards get more than 3 women on them, corporate boards get more than 3 women, they become much more effective. People start to listen to each other more, and they make more money.
Yep, stats on female to beer drinkers in the current market. Rebecca.
The Nielsen stat?
Yeah, I couldn't find the 2019 Nielsen stat. There were a lot of people talking about it, but I couldn't find the actual report itself to break it down. I'm going to assume it's very close to the 2018 stat. I don't think we've moved terribly far away from that one yet.
And
Which
that was
is
70-30?
Yep, that was 70-30. It was 68.5 to do the rest of the math quickly before I find it.
31.5.
But thank you.
She can do math.
I like math.
Yeah. That's a good question.
You know, that's a good question, and I'd have to go back to the source to see. I don't know.
100.
I don't know what more. I guess the size of a corporate board depends on the size of the organization. I would, no, I don't even know. I'm gonna make it up and say 10.
I was going to say 40%. I was going to say 30%.
I think the point is more that once there are 3 women on the board, they feel comfortable expressing their opinions. They feel like they're being listened to. It doesn't matter if there's 20 men on the board, right? Like, it's just about, like, how many times have I been in the room that I'm the only woman and no one is listening to me? Many. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to laugh. Yeah, I'm not going to laugh at the stupid jokes. So I think 3 is probably, I'm guessing here, but I think 3 is probably the number where women feel comfortable enough to voice their concerns and their opinions. Yes.
I was wondering, like, do you all have some pointers or strategies that you can share for those moments when people are making some kind of, trying to make a beer that kind of borders on cultural appropriation, where there's well meaning but very misguided moments when people say, like, this beer is going to be a great beer for our public.
So the question is, what should we have told these people? If we were in the room at this marketing meeting, what should have been said?
So here's what I like to do. I like to be really curious with them and just go, I mean, I'm going to play the dumb woman. And I didn't mean that. That was a joke and it wasn't a good one. I'm going to go, tell me about that. Who's your market? You know, what is the rest of the market? Tell me where, you know, help me out with what as a beer drinker I'm supposed to be understanding from that, or how is that supposed to appeal to me? It's because there's a couple of things there's a number of things that will happen. One of them is you don't sound like you're attacking them, which always helps. You know, you're going in there with an attitude of genuine curiosity, and you will. Either they will start to think as they come up with the answers, and you keep asking questions, and eventually people will usually get to a point where they'll go, "Oh, that wasn't very good, was it?" Or you might learn something that you didn't understand. As cultural appropriation, it's hard to, or misogyny, it's hard to come to something but you might learn something as well. So it's going in just trying to be really, really curious is the least inflammatory way I've found of doing that.
Yeah, I think there's like a strategy, like a psychology strategy called the 3 whys. So you ask why 3 times. Why? Why are you developing this? And then they say, well, we're doing it for this. Well, why? Why did you do it for this? And you just ask why 3 times, and that just gets all of the information out without you having to throat punch. I learned that very late in life.
Take what?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So an established brewery that has a very firm consumer base, how do you diversify your marketing efforts without alienating who you already have? Jen's reaching for the mic. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, do you find those authentic stories in your brewery, you know, that you could tell on social media that are women led, whether, you know, in your wood beer cellar or in your lab or in your management. And I know, like, what side is your marketing department on? Because I don't think we alienate our male customers by becoming more,
Accepting.
diverse. Ungendered in a way,
Yes.
like ungendered in our advertising or in our branding.
I think you can start behind the scenes, honestly. Start sending women to more networking opportunities. It doesn't have to come out in your social media or your labeling or any of that stuff. If it doesn't feel comfortable, if it doesn't feel genuine, if it doesn't feel right, just start working behind the scenes and see where it takes you.
And I think maybe if you have the opportunity, and this is happening in your tasting room, sit down and talk to them. Hey, what do you like about this? What don't you like about it? How is it impacting them? And sometimes the simple act of being listened to diffuses a lot of anger and fear. Just the fact that you're concerned about their opinion as well.
Right. Right.
So we don't want us to target market men.
Yeah.
But should we not target market women, or do we just have to be neutral about everything?
Can I do this? Can I take this? I'm actually going to single somebody out here, which I don't normally do, but Jordan Foss and Eric Moutal, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, had a huge motherfucking win last year with Blush. They put out a pink beer with a pink label. And it is my favorite thing that happened in BC Beer last year, and I didn't even taste that beer. The reason that worked is that it was very, very genuine. When you talk to Jordan about it, and I encourage you to do so, he talks about his anxiety around pinking a beer and how that was going to be perceived. But the reason he made that beer was for himself. He came back from a conference. He had a rosé cider, and he got all excited about it, and he wanted to come home, and he had this vision for the packaging and for what the beer itself would be. And Eric got on board, and they made this incredible beer, and they packaged it, and it was really, really genuine. So whatever you're doing, if you're doing it from a place of genuineness, that will shine through. If you're doing it from a place of, I need to sell beer to somebody and I think they want this, you're doing it from your bandwagon biases and your anchoring biases, and it won't work. So I'm not saying, start selling more beer to women tomorrow, but just start re-examining, your practices and your structure and your culture. And I definitely am saying don't do this. Don't fucking do that. But yeah, go ahead.
Can I say one thing
Yes.
on that? I mean, I think that that is a different panel around the ethics of marketing, right? So, and that's not what we're talking about. It's just like the harmful gender stereotypes, right? So we're not saying don't sell beer to different people. We're saying don't sell beer to certain people in a way that minimizes others. Do you know what I mean?
And not sell beer to certain people because you think that it's going to alienate the people that you already sell beer to, because I don't believe that that's true. I don't believe that that's true. Oh, of course. Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
And mistakes get made. And owning your mistake is perfect. It's great. I've made tons of them.
Yeah.
None of the throat punches were mistakes.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem to market beer to women. It's a problem to condescend to women in that marketing.
Yep. Yeah. So the point being that it's about your culture, and if you have a good culture where everyone is safe and welcome, then they will feel safe and welcome, and they will come. Is that right? Sorry. And bring their friends. Yeah, and their aunts and their sisters and their cousins and their women and their more diverse. Yeah. And I do also want to apologize that we talked primarily about women and the LGBTQ community. It's just our frame of reference, right? So it's the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. It's the easy place to start, but we literally have been talking to 1/8 of the population. So we have, exponential potential here. Okay, the doors are open. Let's go drink some beer. Thank you so much for coming.